I stood in knee-deep snow outside my own home at 11 o'clock at night in February, my daughter-in-law Angela screaming through the locked door that I was too old to need the house anymore. She had changed every lock while I was at my weekly chess club. My clothes, documents, and wallet were inside. My son Garrett was supposedly on a business trip. Angela claimed I left voluntarily and she had papers to prove it. But she did not know about the safety deposit box at First National Bank containing the original deed and my late wife's carefully documented journals. The cold bit through my jacket as I stumbled back to my truck, hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the door handle. I sat there in the driver's seat, engine running, heater blasting air that felt like ice against my frozen skin. My mind refused to accept what had just happened. This was my home. The home Dorothy and I bought 42 years ago when Garrett was just a baby. The home where we raised our son, celebrated birthdays, mourned losses, built a life. I am Maxwell. I turned 67 last month. For 35 years I taught history at Lincoln High School, shaping young minds, watching students grow into adults who sometimes still wrote to thank me. I retired 5 years ago, thinking Dorothy and I would finally have time to travel, to visit national parks, to simply be together without the demands of lesson plans and grading papers. But cancer had other plans. 3 years ago, Dorothy left me. Not by choice. Never by choice. The disease took her in 8 brutal months, and I have been navigating widowhood ever since, learning to cook meals for one, to sleep in a bed that feels too large, to exist in a house full of memories. The house is a 3-bedroom colonial on Maple Street, white with blue shutters, a wraparound porch where Dorothy grew tomatoes every summer. We paid it off 15 years ago, throwing a little celebration dinner with just the two of us and a bottle of wine we had been saving. Every corner holds a piece of our story. The kitchen, where Dorothy taught Garrett to bake cookies. The living room where we watched Garrett take his first steps. The bedroom where we held each other through grief when her mother passed, through joy when Garrett graduated college, through fear during her diagnosis. After Dorothy died, the house felt both comforting and haunting. I kept everything mostly the same. Her books still lined the shelves. Her reading glasses sat on the side table. I was not ready to let go. Garrett worried about me living alone. He called often, visited when he could, though his job as a medical equipment sales representative kept him traveling constantly. Sales conferences in Dallas, client meetings in Boston, training sessions in Denver. He was building a career, and I was proud of him, even when it meant going weeks without seeing him. 2 years ago, everything seemed to shift for the better. Garrett met Angela at a charity fundraiser in the city. He called me that night, voice bright with excitement I had not heard since before his difficult divorce 5 years earlier. That divorce had taken a toll on him emotionally and financially. His ex-wife had been vindictive, expensive, draining. Watching my son struggle through that period had been one of the hardest experiences of my life, second only to losing Dorothy. So when Garrett met Angela and seemed genuinely happy again, I was relieved. Their courtship moved quickly. 6 months from meeting to wedding. Angela seemed wonderful at first. She was 34, 12 years younger than Garrett, with a warm smile and an easy laugh. She worked in real estate, or so she said. She brought homemade lasagna to family dinners. She asked thoughtful questions about Dorothy, looking through photo albums with what appeared to be genuine interest. She complimented the house, calling it charming and full of character. She made Garrett smile again. What more could a father ask for? After the wedding, a small ceremony at the courthouse followed by dinner at a nice restaurant, Angela suggested they should check on me more often. Garrett's travel schedule meant he could not always be around, but Angela lived nearby. She started dropping by once or twice a week, bringing groceries, offering to help with yard work, insisting I should not be doing heavy lifting at my age. I appreciated the attention, even if something about it felt slightly off in ways I could not articulate. She seemed almost too helpful, too interested in the details of my daily life. 6 months ago, Garrett sat me down at the kitchen table with Angela beside him. They had been talking, he said, about what would happen if I had a medical emergency. I lived alone. What if I fell? What if I had a stroke and could not call for help? Angela worked from home most days. She could be my emergency contact, but to really help, she would need access to certain things. My bank accounts, for instance, just in case I was incapacitated and bills needed paying. My insurance information, My doctor's contact details. I hesitated. Something in my gut twisted uncomfortably. But Garrett looked so earnest, so concerned. And Angela smiled that warm smile. They were family. They were trying to help. Dorothy would have wanted me to accept help when it was offered. So I agreed. I added Angela as an authorized user on my checking and savings accounts. For emergencies, I told myself. Just for emergencies. That is when things began to change, so gradually I almost did not notice. Angela started offering suggestions about the house. The furniture was outdated, she said. Might I consider donating some pieces to charity? The basement was cluttered. Would I like her help organizing it? Perhaps we could renovate down there, turn it into a nice family room. I politely declined most suggestions, but Angela persisted, always sweetly, always framed as concern for my well-being. 3 months ago, she convinced me to let her organize my important papers. I had boxes of documents in the study, disorganized and dusty. Tax returns from decades past, medical records, insurance policies. The deed to the house, though I did not remember showing her where I kept that. She said she would create a filing system, make everything easy to find. It seemed harmless. I was never particularly organized with paperwork. Dorothy had always handled that side of things. Angela spent a weekend in my study, sorting and filing. When she finished, she presented me with a color-coded system and a proud smile. Everything was labeled and neat. I thanked her, relieved to have that task off my plate. But over the following weeks I noticed things missing. Dorothy's jewelry box, the one with her wedding ring and the pearl necklace her grandmother gave her, disappeared from my bedroom dresser. When I asked Angela about it, she said she had put it somewhere safe and would retrieve it soon. She never did. Family photo albums vanished from the living room shelves. My father's military medals, which had been displayed in a shadow box in the hallway, were gone. Each time I asked, Angela had the same response. She put them somewhere safe. She would get them later. She was protecting valuables in case of a break-in. Her explanations sounded reasonable, but that twist in my gut returned, tighter each time. 2 months ago, Angela started bringing contractors through the house without warning. I would be reading in the living room, and suddenly there would be a knock at the door. Angela would sweep in with a man carrying a clipboard, discussing renovation plans, pointing at walls, measuring spaces. She introduced them as professionals she was consulting for future updates. I told her I had no intention of renovating. The house was fine as it was. She smiled and said we were just exploring options. Around that time, Garrett seemed more distant during our phone calls. Always rushing. Always another meeting, another flight to catch. When I tried to express concern about Angela's behavior, he brushed it off. She was just trying to help, he said. I was being too sensitive. Maybe I was. Maybe grief and age were making me paranoid. But Dorothy had always trusted her instincts, and she had taught me to trust mine. Last month, Angela brought me brochures for assisted living communities. Glossy pages showing smiling seniors in spotless apartments, descriptions of activities and meal plans, and 24-hour care. She spread them across my kitchen table while I drank my morning coffee. She said I might be more comfortable in a place like this. People my age should not be alone. I could make friends, have support, not worry about maintaining a house. I could sell this place, she suggested gently, and use the money for a nice facility. I put my coffee cup down carefully, fighting to keep my voice steady. I told her I was perfectly capable of caring for myself. I had no intention of leaving my home. This was where Dorothy and I built our life. This was where I intended to stay. Angela's smile thinned. She gathered the brochures without another word and left. After that day, she barely spoke to me. When she came by, which became less frequent, she was cold, polite but distant, calculating. I should have seen it then. I should have understood what was happening. But you never think someone you welcomed into your family, someone married to your son, would plot against you. You never imagine the depth of betrayal possible until you are standing outside your own locked door in the snow, realizing everything you thought you knew was a carefully constructed lie. But here is what Angela did not know. Dorothy was meticulous about documentation. She kept journals, detailed records of our finances, copies of important papers. And years ago, when we paid off the mortgage, Dorothy insisted we put the original deed in a safety deposit box at First National Bank, along with her journals, our marriage certificate, my will, and other irreplaceable documents. Only Dorothy and I had keys. I still had mine on my keychain, which was in my pocket because I had been at chess club when Angela changed the locks. She did not know about that box. She thought she had everything. She was wrong. I sat in my truck in the grocery store parking lot on Route 42, the only place still lit up at this hour, engine running to keep warm. My hands had finally stopped shaking enough to dial my phone. Harold. My friend Harold, a fellow retired teacher who lived about 20 minutes away in an apartment complex near the old downtown. We had taught together for 15 years before he retired, and we had stayed close, especially after Dorothy died and Harold lost his wife Margaret 2 years before that. We understood each other's loneliness. He answered on the third ring, voice groggy. "Maxwell, do you know what time it is?" "I need help," I said, and my voice cracked on the last word. "I will be right there. Where are you?" I gave him the location and waited, watching my breath fog the windows, trying to process what had happened. Harold arrived in 18 minutes, pulling his old sedan next to my truck and climbing out in his pajamas under a heavy coat. He took one look at my face and said, "Get in, we will talk at my place." Harold's apartment was small and neat, filled with books and photographs of Margaret. He made coffee while I sat at his kitchen table, the clock above the stove showing 12:33 in the morning. When he set a steaming mug in front of me, I told him everything. The locked door, Angela's screaming, her claim that the house was hers, the missing documents and jewelry, the forged signatures I had discovered weeks ago, but convinced myself must be a misunderstanding. Harold listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing darker with each detail. When I finished, he sat back and said, "I never trusted her, Maxwell. From the first time Garrett brought her to our retirement party, something felt wrong. The way she looked at your house when you hosted that barbecue last summer, like she was already measuring for curtains. Like she owned the place." "What do I do?" I asked. "Everything I need is inside. My wallet, my medication, my clothes." "We call the police," Harold said. "And tell them what? That my daughter-in-law locked me out of what she claims is now her house? I do not have proof of ownership on me. The deed is in a safety deposit box that I cannot access until Monday morning when the bank opens." "It is Friday night, Harold." He drummed his fingers on the table, thinking, "Breaking in would be illegal, even though it is your house, and you need your blood pressure medication. When did you last take it?" "Thursday morning." "That is 2 days. You cannot wait until Monday." He stood up. "You will stay in my spare room tonight. Tomorrow we figure out our next move. But first, try calling Garrett." I pulled out my phone and dialed Garrett's cell. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. I tried his work number. An automated message informed me that Garrett was on approved leave until the following week and unavailable. "Approved leave?" I stared at Harold. He told me he was at a conference in Seattle. Why would he need approved leave for a conference? Harold's expression turned grim. "Because he is not at a conference." Angela wanted him far away and unreachable. Sleep did not come easily that night in Harold's spare room. I lay awake replaying every interaction with Angela, seeing them now with clear eyes. Every suggestion had been a manipulation. Every kind gesture a move in a chess game I had not realized I was playing. And Garrett, was he part of this? Had my own son betrayed me? The thought made my chest ache worse than the stress tightening around my heart. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold. Harold made breakfast while I stared at my coffee, appetite gone. We needed a plan. We needed evidence. We needed to understand the full scope of what Angela had done. "Let us drive past your house," Harold suggested. "See what is happening." We drove down Maple Street 20 minutes later, parking 3 houses down with a clear view of my driveway. Angela's car, a silver Honda, sat in its usual spot. But next to it was an unfamiliar vehicle, a newer silver sedan with out-of-state plates. As we watched, the front door opened. Angela stepped out, followed by a man in his 30s. Tall, dark hair, expensive-looking jacket. They stood on my porch where Dorothy grew tomatoes, and the man pulled Angela close and kissed her. Not a friendly kiss, an intimate, familiar kiss. "Are you seeing this?" Harold already had his phone out, taking photos through the windshield. "Who is that?" "I have no idea." My voice sounded hollow. The man walked to the silver sedan and drove away. We followed him, keeping several car lengths back, all the way to an apartment complex on the east side of town. He parked in front of Building C and went into Unit 12. Harold wrote down the address. "Maxwell," he said carefully, "I think your daughter-in-law is having an affair. I think it is worse than that." My hands were shaking again. I think this was planned from the beginning. Back at Harold's apartment, I made a decision. I pulled out my phone and checked my bank account, something I had been too afraid to do last night. The savings account, which had contained nearly $32,000, my cushion for emergencies and my modest retirement security, now showed just under $20,000. The checking account, usually around $3,000, held $312. I showed Harold the screen. His face went pale. "She stole from you." She withdrew it gradually. "Look at the transaction history. 2,000 here, 1,500 there, small enough not to trigger alerts. I added her for emergencies." The bitter irony choked me. "She has been draining my accounts for 6 weeks. Harold stood up, face set with determination. "We are not waiting until Monday. We are calling my niece Sharon right now. She is a paralegal at Morrison and Associates downtown. She will know what to do." Sharon agreed to meet us Sunday morning at a coffee shop on Main Street. She was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed and professional, and she listened to my story without interruption while making notes on her tablet. When I finished, she looked up. "If Angela forged documents or filed fraudulent paperwork, that is felony fraud, possibly elder abuse given your age, but we need proof. Do you have the original deed?" "In a safety deposit box at First National. I have the key." "Good. We need that Monday morning, first thing. We also need to document everything. Every withdrawal, every interaction, every witness who can verify your mental competence and the timeline of events. File a police report. Get a lawyer. This is serious, Maxwell. She is not just stealing from you, she is trying to steal your entire life." But Sunday morning brought a new crisis. I woke feeling dizzy, my heart racing irregularly. Harold took one look at me and drove straight to the urgent care clinic on Henderson Avenue. The doctor, a young woman named Dr. Patel, checked my blood pressure, and her expression turned severe. 190 over 115. "That is dangerously high, Mr. Maxwell. When did you last take your medication?" "Thursday morning. My daughter-in-law locked me out of my house. Everything is inside." Dr. Patel's expression shifted from concern to anger. "She prevented you from accessing life-sustaining medication? That is abuse." She wrote prescriptions immediately and documented everything in my medical records. "I am noting this file is available for legal proceedings. What she did could have killed you." As we left the clinic with prescriptions filled at the attached pharmacy, I felt something shift inside me. Anger, pure, clarifying anger. Angela had not just stolen my money or tried to take my house. She had endangered my life. No more passive acceptance. No more benefit of the doubt. This was war, and I intended to win. Sunday afternoon I decided to reach Garrett another way. If he would not answer my calls, maybe he would talk to someone else. I contacted Dennis, Garrett's best friend from college, who lived 2 hours north. They had stayed close over the years. Dennis answered immediately. "Maxwell, how are you? I have been meaning to call." "I need your help, Dennis." I explained the situation. The silence on the other end stretched long. "That is insane. Garrett told me Angela was stressed about your declining health. He said you were becoming forgetful, having trouble managing things. He seemed worried about you." Ice flooded my veins. "I am not declining, Dennis. My doctor just confirmed I am cognitively sound. Angela has been lying to him." "Oh no." Dennis's voice dropped. "She has been planting seeds, creating a narrative. Maxwell, let me call Garrett. I will find out where he really is and what he knows. Give me an hour." True to his word, Dennis called back 62 minutes later. "Garrett is at a medical conference in Chicago, not Seattle. He will be back Tuesday afternoon. He has no idea any of this is happening. Angela told him you asked her to help manage some paperwork because you were feeling overwhelmed. He believed her completely. So Garrett was not part of the plot." Relief and fury warred in my chest. My son was innocent but deceived. Angela had manipulated both of us, playing us against each other, isolating us while she executed her plan. "Dennis, tell him there is a family emergency. Do not give details. Just tell him he needs to come home immediately." "I will call him right now." 10 minutes later, my phone rang. "Garrett." "Dad?" Dennis said, "There is an emergency." What is wrong? Are you okay? I had not cried since Dorothy's funeral. But hearing my son's voice, full of genuine concern and love, broke something inside me. Garrett, I need you to come home. Angela has done something terrible. She locked me out of the house, she stole money from my accounts, and son, she is married to someone else. The silence lasted a full minute. When Garrett spoke again, his voice was broken. What are you talking about? Come home, please. We will explain everything, but I need you here. I am booking a flight right now. I will be there tomorrow morning. Dad, I am so sorry. I did not know. I swear I did not know. I know, son. I know. That evening, Sharon called with news that made my blood run cold. Maxwell, I ran a property records search. Angela filed a quitclaim deed Thursday morning, the day she locked you out. It transferred the property from you to herself and Garrett jointly. She used what appears to be your notarized signature. The deed was expedited and recorded Friday morning. According to county records, you no longer legally own your house. She had stolen my home on paper before she locked me out in the snow. This was not impulsive. This was calculated, precise, planned. But she had made one critical mistake. She did not know about the safety deposit box, about Dorothy's meticulous documentation, about the original deed that would prove her forgery. Monday morning arrived cold and bright. Harold drove me to First National Bank at 8 o'clock sharp, pulling into the parking lot just as Mrs. Peterson, the branch manager, unlocked the doors. She had known Dorothy for 20 years, had helped us with our mortgage and later our retirement accounts. When she saw me, her professional smile faltered. Maxwell? You look terrible. Is everything all right? No. I need to access my safety deposit box. She led us to the vault, her concern evident. I signed the access log with shaking hands and followed her into the small private room. The box was exactly as Dorothy and I had left it 3 years ago. I opened it carefully. Inside lay the original deed, recorded 42 years ago, our names written in fading ink. Dorothy's journals, 5 leather-bound volumes documenting our life together. Our marriage certificate, my will, birth certificates. Everything that proved who I was and what was mine. Mrs. Peterson provided copies of everything and notarized them without charge. Maxwell Dorothy was a dear friend. If someone is trying to take advantage of you, I want to help. What else do you need? My bank statements. Every transaction from the past 3 months. She printed them immediately. The withdrawals stood out starkly. Angela had been systematic, careful, but the pattern was clear. $12,000 siphoned away in amounts ranging from $800 to $2,000. Never enough to trigger automatic fraud alerts. Just enough to bleed me dry slowly. She came in Wednesday, Mrs. Peterson said quietly, reviewing the records. The day before you were locked out, she asked about accessing your accounts, claimed she had power of attorney. I refused to provide information without proper documentation. She left angry, said I would regret not cooperating. Did she threaten you? Not explicitly. But the implication was clear. Armed with documentation, Harold and I drove straight to the police station. The lobby smelled like old coffee and floor cleaner. I asked to speak with someone about fraud and elder abuse. They sent us to Detective Lisa Brennan, a woman in her late 40s with tired eyes that sharpened the moment I started explaining. She listened intently, examining the forged deed, the bank statements, the photos Harold had taken of Angela with the unknown man. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. This is identity theft, forgery, and possibly elder financial abuse. Given the amounts involved and the sophistication of the scheme, this is serious. I am opening an investigation immediately. She made phone calls while we waited. First to the notary whose stamp appeared on the fraudulent deed. Mr. Chen arrived at the station 40 minutes later, a small man in his 60s who looked confused and worried. Detective Brennan showed him copies of the document. Did you notarize this? Mr. Chen examined it closely, then shook his head vigorously. No, I have never seen this man. He pointed at my signature. I keep detailed records of every notarization. This date is from 2 weeks ago. I was on vacation in Florida visiting my daughter. And look, this is not even my current stamp. This is the old one that was stolen from my car 2 months ago. I reported the theft. There should be a police report. Detective Brennan pulled up the report on her computer. February 18th. stolen from vehicle parked at grocery store on Willow Avenue. So whoever did this used a stolen notary stamp, which makes it a more serious felony. She looked at me. Mr. Maxwell, I would like to arrange for you to retrieve your belongings from the house. I will accompany you with uniformed officers. We need to confront Angela anyway. Can you be ready in an hour? I have been ready since Friday night. At 1:30 that afternoon, 2 police cruisers pulled up in front of my house. Detective Brennan, Harold, 2 uniformed officers, and me. Neighbors peeked through curtains. I felt both vindicated and humiliated. This was my home, and I needed police to enter it. Detective Brennan knocked firmly. After a moment, the door opened. Angela stood there in yoga pants and a sweatshirt, her expression confident and slightly amused, until she saw the uniforms. Then her face went pale, her eyes darting between the officers and me. "Can I help you?" Her voice was steady, but I saw her hands trembling. "I am Detective Brennan. Are you Angela Maxwell?" "Yes." "May we come in?" "Do you have a warrant?" "I do not need one if you let us in voluntarily. Or I can obtain one, which will take several hours and make this much more unpleasant. Your choice." Angela stepped aside. We entered my home, which now felt alien, different, violated. She had rearranged furniture. Dorothy's favorite chair was gone. New curtains hung in the windows. Angela had already started making the house hers. Detective Brennan asked to see Angela's identification. She produced her driver's license. The detective examined it, then pulled out the forged deed. "Can you explain this document?" "Maxwell signed that. He wanted to add Garrett and me to the property for estate planning purposes." "Did he sign it willingly?" "Of course." Detective Brennan pulled out the notary report. This document was supposedly notarized on March 2nd. But the notary, whose stamp appears here, was out of state that day and reported his stamp stolen in February. So this notarization is fraudulent, which means this deed is fraudulent, which means you committed forgery. Angela's confident facade cracked. "I do not know what you are talking about. I also have bank records showing you withdrew $12,000 from Mr. Maxwell's accounts over 6 weeks. He added, you for emergencies only. This was not an emergency. This was theft. He gave me permission. Do you have that permission in writing?" Angela's mouth opened and closed. No words came out. "I have medical records from Dr. Patel at Henderson Urgent Care documenting that you prevented Mr. Maxwell from accessing his blood pressure medication, causing a potentially life-threatening situation. That is elder abuse. He could have gone to a pharmacy. With what money? You drained his checking account. With what ID? His wallet was in this house that you locked him out of." Angela's face shifted from pale to flushed. "I want a lawyer. That is your right. But answer me this. Where did you get the money to hire a lawyer? Because if it came from Mr. Maxwell's accounts, that is more theft." At that moment, we heard a car in the driveway. A door slammed, footsteps on the porch. The front door opened and the man from Saturday morning walked in, keys in hand like he belonged here. He froze when he saw the police. Detective Brennan turned to him. "And who are you?" "Brian Montgomery." He looked at Angela, confused. "What is going on? What is your relationship to Angela Maxwell?" "I am her husband." The room went silent. Detective Brennan looked between them. "You are married to Angela?" "Yes. 7 years last October." My brain stuttered trying to process this. 7 years. That meant when Angela married Garrett 2 years ago, she was already married to Brian, which meant her marriage to Garrett was not just a lie. It was legally invalid. My son had been conned into a bigamous marriage. Detective Brennan's expression hardened. "Angela Maxwell, you are under arrest for fraud, identity theft, forgery, elder abuse, and bigamy." She read Angela her rights while one of the officers handcuffed her. Angela started crying, mascara running down her face, but the tears looked calculated, performative. Detective Brennan turned to Brian. "Mr. Montgomery, I need you to come to the station voluntarily to answer questions. If you refuse, I will arrest you as an accomplice." Brian's confidence evaporated. "I did not do anything wrong." "Then you should have no problem answering questions." As they led Angela and Brian out in separate patrol cars, I stood in my living room feeling dizzy. Harold steadied me. "Maxwell, sit down before you fall down." But I could not sit. Not yet. I walked through the house, room by room, cataloging everything Angela had changed or stolen. Dorothy's reading chair was gone from the bedroom. The photo of our wedding day that had hung in the hallway was missing. Kitchen cabinets had been rearranged. It felt like a violation on top of a violation. "Mr. Maxwell." Detective Brennan approached gently. "I need to finish processing the scene, but you should gather your medication and essential items. You cannot stay here tonight. The house is part of an active investigation. This is my house. I know, and we will get it back to you. But I need to document everything first. Give me 24 hours. Harold touched my shoulder. "Come on, one more night at my place. Then we fix this." I packed a bag with clothes, my medication, my wallet that had been sitting on my dresser where I left it Thursday morning. As I walked out, I looked back at the house Dorothy and I built a life in. It looked the same from the outside, white with blue shutters, wraparound porch. But inside, it had been gutted of its soul. We would get it back. We had to. At the police station, Detective Brennan separated Angela and Brian into different interview rooms. I sat with Harold in a waiting area, watching through an observation window as Brian spoke with the detective. He looked scared. Good. Brian's story came out in a rush. He and Angela had been married 7 years, just as he said. They lived in Ohio before moving to this area 3 years ago. His words grew more damaging with each sentence. They had run similar schemes before. Angela would target men, usually older or vulnerable, gain their trust, marry them if necessary, access their assets, forge documents, drain accounts. They targeted me specifically because Garrett had mentioned his father owned valuable property outright and lived alone after his wife died. Detective Brennan leaned forward. "How many times have you done this?" Brian hesitated, then seemed to realize cooperation was his only option. 4 times before Maxwell. Maybe 5. Maybe? There was a woman in Ohio. Angela got close to her, but we left before we could finalize anything. The woman started asking too many questions. "What were the names of the other victims?" Brian provided names, addresses, details. Detective Brennan wrote everything down, her expression growing darker. She asked about his role. Brian claimed he stayed in the background, let Angela do the work. But text messages on his phone told a different story. They had discussed every step, celebrated small victories, planned exit strategies. "How did you research Maxwell?" Garrett talked about his father during casual conversations with Angela. She asked questions. Found out about Dorothy's death, about Maxwell living alone, about the house being paid off. She researched property records online. Then she started dating Garrett specifically to get access. The words hit me like physical blows. Every smile Angela gave Garrett had been calculated. Every kind gesture to me had been manipulation. She had weaponized my son's loneliness and my grief. Detective Brennan showed Brian photos. "Who is this?" A picture of Angela kissing Brian on my porch. "That is us. We were celebrating." Angela texted me Thursday night that everything had gone perfectly. Maxwell was locked out, the deed was filed, the money was almost all moved. We just needed to wait out the weekend until her lawyer could finalize the sale of the property. She was going to sell Maxwell's house? That was the plan. Quick sale, below market value for fast cash. We would split the proceeds, probably $300,000 or more, then move to Florida. Start over. I felt Harold's hand on my shoulder, keeping me grounded. They had planned to erase me. Not just steal my home, but sell it out from under me, take the money, and disappear. And if the stress killed me in the process, all the better for them. No victim to testify. In the other room, Angela refused to speak without a lawyer. She sat with arms crossed, face blank, but her silence did not matter. Brian had given them everything they needed. Detective Brennan came out to speak with me. "Mr. Maxwell, I need to inform you that this case is bigger than we initially thought." Brian admitted to 4 or 5 previous schemes. "We are contacting law enforcement in other jurisdictions. This may become a federal case because the crimes crossed state lines." "What happens now?" "We hold them overnight. Tomorrow they will be arraigned. Given the severity and the flight risk, I will recommend no bail. Your house is being processed as a crime scene right now, but it should be released back to you by tomorrow evening. In the meantime, I need you to make a formal statement, everything from the beginning." I spent 2 hours recounting every detail while Detective Brennan recorded and transcribed. By the time we finished, it was after 7 o'clock. Harold drove me back to his apartment. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, but also felt something unexpected. Hope. The truth was coming out. Justice was beginning. That evening I tried calling Garrett again. This time he answered on the first ring. "Dad? I just landed." "Where are you? What is happening?" "Can you come to Harold's apartment? I will explain everything." Garrett arrived 30 minutes later, still in his travel clothes, face drawn with worry. When he saw me, he pulled me into a hug. "Dad, what is going on?" Dennis said there was an emergency, but would not tell me what. I told him everything. Harold filled in details I missed. As the story unfolded, Garrett's expression moved through disbelief, shock, horror, and finally a grief so profound I saw the boy he used to be, the one who cried when his goldfish died, when his high school girlfriend broke his heart, when his mother was diagnosed. "She was married to someone else the whole time?" His voice cracked. "Our wedding was fake?" "Yes." "She used me to get to you?" "Yes." He put his head in his hands. "Dad, I am so sorry. I signed papers she brought me. She said they were estate planning documents to protect you. She said you asked her to help because you were feeling overwhelmed. I trusted her. I never questioned. I just signed." "What papers?" "I do not know. She said they were power of attorney forms or something. That if anything happened to you, I would be able to make decisions. She said it was what you wanted." He looked up, face anguished. "Did I give her the house? Did my signature on those papers give her legal claim? We will find out, but Garrett, you were deceived. She manipulated both of us. I should have seen it. I should have asked more questions. I should have protected you instead of letting her between us. She was a professional con artist. This is what she does. We are not the first family she targeted, and if we had not stopped her, we would not have been the last." Detective Brennan called my phone at 9:15. "Mr. Maxwell, I wanted to update you. We pulled Angela and Brian's text messages. They have been planning this for 18 months. Since before Angela even met Garrett. They researched your family specifically. This was premeditated, calculated, and part of a pattern. We are also getting calls from other jurisdictions. A widow in Ohio lost her entire house to a similar scheme 3 years ago. We think that was Angela, and Brian too." "What happened to the widow?" "She died 6 months after losing her home. Heart attack, according to the death certificate. But her daughter believes it was a broken heart. That woman spent 50 years in that house, and Angela took it." Rage burned through me, hot and clarifying. They killed her. Not directly, but yes, their actions led to her death. That is why this case matters, Mr. Maxwell. It is not just about money or property. It is about predators who destroy lives. After the call ended, I sat with Garrett and Harold in silence. Finally, Garrett spoke. "What do you need from me, Dad?" "The truth. When Angela brought you papers to sign, do you remember when? What they looked like?" He thought hard. 3 weeks ago, maybe 4. "She said you had been to a lawyer, and these were the estate planning documents he prepared. She said you were embarrassed to ask me directly, that you were worried about seeming old or incapable, so you asked her to handle it. I thought I was helping you. Did you read what you signed?" I skimmed it. Legal language, hard to understand. She said it was standard. Her name was on it, mine too. I figured it was just saying we were authorized to make medical and financial decisions if you became unable. I never imagined she would use it to steal from you. We will give that information to Detective Brennan. Your statement will help the case." He nodded, then looked at me with Dorothy's eyes. "Dad, I am going to fix this. I am going to make this right. You did not break it, son. You do not have to fix it alone." But I saw the determination in his face. Garrett blamed himself, and no amount of reassurance would change that until he found a way to make amends. That was okay. We would fight this battle together. That night, lying in Harold's spare bed, I thought about the widow in Ohio, a woman whose name I did not know, who lost everything to Angela's lies, who died alone and broken-hearted because predators saw her vulnerability and exploited it. Her death would not be meaningless. We would stop Angela and Brian. We would make sure they could never do this again. Dorothy used to say the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I almost did nothing. I almost accepted defeat that night in the snow. But I had Harold and Garrett and now Detective Brennan. We were not going to let evil win. Tuesday morning brought Sharon to Harold's apartment with a briefcase full of legal documents. She had worked through the night preparing an emergency petition to void the fraudulent deed and restore my ownership. Garrett sat with us at the kitchen table, looking like he had not slept. "The judge has agreed to an emergency hearing this afternoon at 2 o'clock, Sharon said. "We have strong evidence. The forged documents, the stolen notary stamp, Brian's confession, the bank records. Detective Brennan will testify. With any luck, we can get the deed voided and a restraining order issued today." At the police station, Detective Brennan updated us on the investigation. Brian had spent Monday night cooperating fully, providing names, dates, locations of previous schemes. Angela, by contrast, had remained silent until her court-appointed lawyer arrived Tuesday morning. Then she tried to claim Brian had acted alone, that she was a victim too, that she knew nothing about the forgeries or theft. "Her lawyer is not buying it," Detective Brennan said. "The evidence is overwhelming. But here is something interesting. We contacted law enforcement in Ohio and Illinois about the other victims Brian mentioned. They are reopening cases. And this morning the FBI contacted me." "The FBI?" Garrett looked up sharply. "Because the crimes cross state lines, this falls under federal jurisdiction. Wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft across state lines. These are federal offenses. An agent is flying in this afternoon to take over the investigation. Which is actually good for you, Mr. Maxwell. Federal prosecutors have more resources, and federal prison sentences are longer." At 1:45, we arrived at the courthouse. Judge Patricia Rodriguez presided, a woman in her 60s known for her sharp mind and low tolerance for fraud. Sharon presented our case efficiently. The forged deed with the stolen notary stamp, the original deed from the safety deposit box, bank statements showing the unauthorized withdrawals, Brian's confession detailing the scheme, my medical records from Dr. Patel, Detective Brennan's testimony about Angela's arrest and the ongoing investigation. Angela's lawyer tried to argue that the deed should stand because Garrett's signature was genuine and he had an ownership interest as Maxwell's son. Sharon demolished that argument by pointing out that Garrett signed under false pretenses, believing the documents were estate planning tools requested by his father, not a property transfer. Garrett testified to that effect, his voice steady despite his obvious distress. Judge Rodriguez listened to everything, asked pointed questions, then reviewed the original deed. She looked at me. "Mr. Maxwell, is it your wish to maintain sole ownership of the property at 47 Maple Street?" "Yes, Your Honor. It is my home. My late wife and I bought it 42 years ago. I have no intention of giving it up." "Then the fraudulent quitclaim deed is hereby voided. Ownership is restored to Maxwell Henry Thompson. The county recorder will be notified immediately to correct the property records." She banged her gavel. "Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order. Angela Montgomery, also known as Angela Maxwell, is prohibited from contacting Mr. Maxwell or his son Garrett, from entering the property at 47 Maple Street, and from accessing any of Mr. Maxwell's financial accounts. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." Relief flooded through me so powerfully my knees buckled. Garrett caught my arm, steadying me. Harold gripped my other shoulder. We had won. The house was mine again, but the day was not over. At 3:30, FBI Special Agent Marcus Webb arrived at the police station, a tall man in his 40s with gray at his temples and eyes that had seen too much. He interviewed me, Garrett, and Harold separately, taking detailed statements. Then he met with Angela and Brian. Agent Webb found us in the waiting area an hour later. "I wanted to give you an update. Based on the evidence collected and Brian Montgomery's cooperation, we are filing federal charges. Wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit fraud. Angela Montgomery is also being charged with bigamy, which under federal law applies because she used the fraudulent marriage to access government documents and banking systems." "What about the other victims?" I asked. "We have identified 3 confirmed victims in addition to you. A widow in Ohio who lost her home, as Detective Brennan mentioned. A divorced man in Illinois who lost over $40,000. An elderly couple in Indiana who were targeted but reported suspicious activity before Angela could complete the scheme. The Ohio victim, Mrs. Patricia Henderson, died 8 months after losing her home. Her daughter has been trying to get justice for 3 years. Agent Webb pulled out his phone and showed us a photo, an elderly woman with kind eyes and gray hair, smiling in front of a modest house. Patricia Henderson, 73 when she died. She and her husband built that house 50 years ago, raised 4 children there. After he died, she lived alone. Angela befriended her at a church social, gained her trust over 6 months, then convinced her to add Angela's name to the deed for help with maintenance. Once she had access, Angela forged documents transferring full ownership, then evicted Patricia. By the time Patricia found a lawyer, Angela had sold the house. Patricia spent her last months in a cheap apartment, heartbroken and ashamed. Her daughter said she stopped eating, stopped caring. The death certificate says heart failure, but her family knows the truth. I stared at the photo, grief tightening my throat. She killed her. Not legally, but morally? Yes. That is why I am making this case a priority. Angela and Brian Montgomery are predators. They target vulnerable people, steal their security, and leave destruction behind. They need to be stopped permanently. What kind of sentence are we looking at? Garrett asked. Federal sentencing guidelines for these charges? Angela is looking at 15 to 20 years. Brian, because he cooperated, might get 8 to 12 with a plea deal. But I am going to push for the maximum. These are not first-time offenders. This is a pattern of predatory behavior spanning years. Detective Brennan joined us. We executed a search warrant on Brian's apartment, found documents related to 4 previous schemes, including detailed plans for selling Maxwell's house. They had already contacted a real estate agent, scheduled a listing for next week. The agent thought Angela was the owner based on the forged deed. If we had not caught them when we did, the house might have sold before Maxwell could prove ownership. The scope of how close I came to losing everything hit me like a wave. If I had not had the safety deposit box, if Dorothy had not been meticulous about documentation, if Harold had not helped me, if Sharon had not acted quickly, if Detective Brennan had not taken me seriously, any one of those pieces missing, and I would have lost the home Dorothy and I built, the place where we raised our son, where memories lived in every corner. Agent Webb's phone rang. He stepped away to answer it, then returned looking grim. That was the prosecutor in Ohio. They are reopening Patricia Henderson's case with new evidence. If they can prove Angela's actions directly contributed to Patricia's death, they might pursue manslaughter charges. That would add years to the sentence. Good, I said, and meant it. We left the courthouse and police station as the sun set, painting the sky orange and purple. Sharon drove us to Maple Street. The police tape had been removed. The house stood quiet in the fading light. My house. Home. Detective Brennan met us there with a key. Angela's belongings have been removed and are being held as evidence. We documented everything. You are free to enter whenever you are ready. I took the key with shaking hands. Garrett walked beside me up the porch steps. Harold and Sharon followed. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. It smelled different. Angela's perfume lingered. But underneath, I caught traces of the home I knew. Dorothy's favorite candle scent. Old wood. Memories. We spent the evening changing every lock. Garrett had already ordered a security system with cameras that would be installed Thursday. For tonight, we would stay together. Garrett in his old bedroom, Harold in the guest room. Me in the master bedroom that still held Dorothy's reading glasses on the nightstand. Before bed, I walked through each room, reclaiming it. The kitchen where Dorothy taught Garrett to bake. The living room where we watched him take first steps. The study where I graded papers and Dorothy kept her journals. Angela had tried to take this, but she had failed. The house was mine again. Damaged, yes. Violated, yes. But mine, in the basement, behind a stack of boxes Angela had not bothered to search, I found Dorothy's jewelry box. She had not managed to sell it. The pearls her grandmother gave her were still inside. Her wedding ring. The locket with photos of young Garrett. I held the box against my chest and let myself cry for the first time since Friday night. Tears of grief, relief, rage, and gratitude all mixed together. Garrett found me there. He did not say anything, just sat beside me on the cold basement floor and put his arm around my shoulders. We sat in silence, father and son. 2 men who had been betrayed and manipulated but had survived. Together. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of legal proceedings, police interviews, and slow emotional recovery. The FBI investigation expanded as more victims came forward after news coverage of Angela and Brian's arrest. A man in Tennessee recognized Angela's photo and reported a similar scheme from 4 years ago. Another woman in Kentucky described losing her late husband's life insurance money to a helpful friend who matched Angela's description. Each new victim added weight to the federal case. Agent Webb kept me updated regularly. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages between Angela and Brian detailed every scheme, including callous discussions about which victims were easier marks and celebrations when they successfully stole property or money. In one particularly damaging message, Angela wrote, "Old people are so trusting. Maxwell never suspected a thing." Reading that hurt worse than the financial theft. She had viewed my trust, my grief, my willingness to welcome her into my family, as weaknesses to exploit. She had laughed about it with Brian. They had made a game of destroying lives. The federal prosecutor, a woman named Catherine Mills, was relentless. She filed charges not just against Angela and Brian but also against the real estate agent who had agreed to list my house, knowing the deed transfer was suspiciously recent. The agent claimed ignorance, but text messages showed Angela had paid her extra to expedite the listing without standard verification procedures. 10 days after the arrest, the preliminary hearing took place. I attended with Garrett, Harold, and Sharon. The courtroom was packed with journalists, other victims, and federal agents. Angela entered in an orange jumpsuit, her confident smirk long gone. She looked smaller, diminished. Brian sat separately, his cooperation agreement requiring him to testify against her. The prosecutor presented evidence methodically: forged documents, bank records, text messages, Brian's testimony detailing the schemes. Patricia Henderson's daughter testified about her mother's decline and death after losing her home. The divorced man from Illinois described how Angela had posed as a financial advisor and stolen his divorce settlement. The couple from Indiana explained how they reported Angela to authorities when she pushed too hard for access to their accounts, likely saving themselves from becoming victims. When it was my turn to testify, I looked directly at Angela. "You came into my family during the hardest period of my life. I had just lost my wife. I was learning to be alone. I welcomed you because you made my son happy. I trusted you because I believe in family. You took that trust and weaponized it. You did not just try to steal my house. You tried to steal my dignity, my security, my peace. But you failed, because you underestimated something fundamental. You thought I was alone, weak, easy. But I had my son, my friends, my community. You thought isolation made me vulnerable. It actually made me strong enough to fight back." Angela's lawyer requested bail. The judge denied it, citing flight risk and danger to the community. Miss Montgomery has demonstrated a pattern of predatory behavior targeting vulnerable individuals. She will remain in federal custody pending trial. Back at home, life slowly found a new rhythm. Garrett visited 3 times a week, helping me repair the damage Angela had caused, both physical and emotional. We repainted the living room, erasing the changes she had made. We restored Dorothy's furniture from storage. We hung family photos back on the walls. Each small act of restoration felt like reclaiming a piece of what had been stolen. Harold became a regular dinner guest. Our friendship, already strong, deepened through the shared trauma. We talked about Margaret and Dorothy, about aging, about trust and betrayal. We played chess and argued about politics and watched old movies. The loneliness that had made me vulnerable to Angela's manipulations receded as I realized I was not truly alone. The bank investigation concluded with First National reimbursing me the $4,000 that could not be recovered from Angela and Brian's accounts. Mrs. Peterson personally apologized, though the theft was not the bank's fault. "We are implementing new safeguards," she said. "Additional verification for account changes. Automatic alerts for unusual withdrawal patterns. What happened to you is going to help us protect other customers." My chess club friends rallied around me. They brought meals, offered help with yard work, invited me to social gatherings. Mrs. Chen from 3 houses down organized a neighborhood watch, partly motivated by anger that a criminal had been living on our street without anyone noticing. Mr. Martinez across the street installed security cameras and shared the footage with several neighbors, creating a network of protection. The local newspaper ran a story about elder fraud, featuring my case prominently. I initially hesitated about the publicity, But Sharon convinced me it served a purpose. People need to know this happens. Your story could prevent someone else from becoming a victim. The article prompted calls from other seniors who had experienced similar manipulation or suspected they were being targeted. I started volunteering at the senior center downtown, leading a workshop on protecting against financial exploitation. I created a handout with warning signs. Someone pushing for quick access to accounts, isolation from family and friends, pressure to sign documents without legal review, changes to estate plans or property deeds that seem rushed or unexplained. One woman in her 70s approached me after a workshop, tears in her eyes. My daughter's new boyfriend has been suggesting I add him to my bank account for emergencies. I thought I was being paranoid for feeling uncomfortable. Now I know to trust that feeling. Always trust your instincts, I told her, and never make financial decisions under pressure. Real family respects boundaries. 6 weeks after the lockout, Garrett and I sat on the porch on a Saturday morning, drinking coffee and watching the neighborhood wake up. He had been in therapy, processing the betrayal and his own guilt. My therapist says I was a victim too, he said quietly. But I still feel responsible. I brought her into your life. You thought you were in love. She manipulated you as much as she manipulated me. I should have seen it. The way she isolated us from each other. How she always had explanations that made me doubt my own concerns. That is what abusers do, the therapist says. They make you question reality. Yes. And now you know what to watch for. You are wiser and more careful. That is how we grow. He smiled sadly. Dad, I am not going to rush into another relationship. I need time to figure out who I am without someone else defining it. That is smart. Take all the time you need. We sat in comfortable silence. Then Garrett said, I want to do something for the woman in Ohio, Patricia Henderson. Her daughter is still dealing with legal bills trying to clear her mother's name and recover assets. Can we start a fund or something? That is a good idea. Let us talk to Sharon about setting up something to help victims of financial exploitation. We can use our experience to help others. 3 months after my lockout in the snow, the call came from Agent Webb. Angela has accepted a plea deal, 20 years in federal prison. No parole possibility for at least 15 years. Brian got 12 years with his cooperation agreement. The judge will formally sentence them next week. Do you want to provide a victim impact statement? Yes, absolutely. The sentencing hearing was smaller than the preliminary hearing, just the victims, lawyers, and necessary personnel. Patricia Henderson's daughter was there, a woman in her 50s with her mother's kind eyes. We had spoken on the phone several times. She hugged me when we arrived. Thank you for fighting back. For making sure they could not do this to anyone else. Your mother deserved justice. I am sorry it came too late. But it came. That is what matters. When the judge asked if I had a statement, I stood. I had written and rewritten it a dozen times, finally settling on simple truth. Your Honor, Angela Montgomery tried to take my home, but she gave me something unexpected. She reminded me I am not alone. My son and I are closer now than we have been in years. My community rallied around me. I discovered strength I did not know I had. She tried to make me a victim. Instead, she made me an advocate. I will spend the rest of my life educating people about predators like her, protecting others from experiencing what I experienced. She failed in every way that matters. And now she will spend the next 20 years knowing that her victims survived, thrived, and turned her cruelty into a force for good. Angela sat stone-faced throughout the statements. When the judge sentenced her to 20 years, she showed no reaction. But as the bailiffs let her out, she glanced back at me. For just a moment, I saw something that might have been regret, or maybe just anger at being caught. I would never know, and I found I did not care. Outside the courthouse, Garrett and I stood in the spring sunshine. New leaves budded on the trees. The world felt fresh, full of possibility. It is over, he said. This part is. Now we focus on moving forward. We went home. Home to Maple Street, to the White House with blue shutters, to the porch where Dorothy grew tomatoes and where I would plant them again this summer. Home to the place we had fought to keep, not because of its monetary value, but because of what it represented. Security, family, memory, love. That evening, I opened Dorothy's journals and read her words from 42 years ago. We signed the papers today. The house is ours. Maxwell and I are homeowners. It feels surreal, and wonderful. This is where we will build our life, raise our children, grow old together. This house will hold our story." She had been right. The house held our story. And now it held a new chapter, one about betrayal and resilience, about family bonds tested and strengthened, about facing evil and refusing to let it win. Dorothy would have been proud of how I fought back. She would have been proud of Garrett for standing with me. She would have been proud of the community that rallied, the friends who supported us, the justice system that worked. I closed the journal and placed it carefully back in the safety deposit box at First National Bank, alongside the original deed that had saved me. Some documents are too important to risk. Some stories are too valuable to lose. This was ours, and no one could ever take it away again. 1 year after Angela Montgomery screamed at me through the locked door of my own home, I stood in that same doorway welcoming guests for Thanksgiving dinner. The house smelled like roasting turkey, Dorothy's recipe for stuffing and pumpkin pie. Garrett arrived first, carrying wine and a store-bought dessert since his cooking skills remained limited. Harold came next with his famous green bean casserole. Sharon brought her husband and 2 kids. Detective Brennan, now a friend I met for coffee monthly, arrived with flowers. Mrs. Peterson from First National Bank came with her wife. Dennis drove down from 2 hours away. Even Agent Webb made an appearance, taking a break from his caseload to check on how I was doing. The dining room table, which had felt too large for just me for 3 years, was full. Laughter filled the spaces where silence had lived. The house felt alive again, not in the way it had when Dorothy was here, but in a new way that honored her memory while embracing the present. As we sat down to eat, I looked around at these people who had saved me in different ways. Garrett, who had learned the hard way about trust and manipulation but had emerged stronger and wiser. Harold, whose friendship had been my anchor through the storm. Sharon, who had fought legally for my rights. Detective Brennan, who had believed me when I had nothing but my word. Each person at this table had played a role in reclaiming not just my house but my dignity and peace. "I want to say something before we eat," I announced. The conversations quieted. A year ago I was standing outside in the snow, locked out of my own home, wondering if I had lost everything. I felt betrayed, foolish, alone. But I was wrong about being alone. Each of you, in your own way, reminded me that isolation is a choice, not a condition. You stood with me. You fought for me. You showed me that asking for help is not weakness but wisdom. Garrett reached over and squeezed my hand. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. We had come so far, rebuilding our relationship on honesty and communication instead of assumptions and distance. The foundation for justice that we built together did more than restore my property. It stopped predators who had destroyed other lives and would have destroyed more. Patricia Henderson's daughter told me last week that knowing her mother's death led to Angela's imprisonment has given her peace. The man from Illinois recovered some of his stolen money and used it to start a nonprofit helping fraud victims. The couple from Indiana now runs workshops teaching seniors about financial safety. We turned something terrible into something meaningful. I paused, gathering my thoughts. I started a scholarship fund in Patricia's name for students studying elder law. Garrett and I established a victim assistance program that helps people who have been targeted by financial predators. We are using our experience to protect others. That is how we take power back from those who tried to harm us. The meal was beautiful. We ate and talked and laughed. Harold told embarrassing stories about me from our teaching days. Sharon's kids asked questions about history that reminded me why I had loved teaching. Agent Webb shared updates on other cases his team had solved, always careful not to reveal identifying details, but giving us glimpses into how the justice system worked to protect vulnerable people. After dinner, as guests moved to the living room with coffee and pie, Patricia Henderson's daughter called. I stepped onto the porch to take the call, the same porch where Angela had kissed Brian while planning to steal my life. "Maxwell, I wanted you to know. The prosecutor in Ohio filed additional charges today. Manslaughter. They believe they can prove Angela's actions directly caused my mother's death. If convicted, she could get another 10 years added to her sentence. How do you feel about that?" "Relieved, vindicated, sad that it is necessary but grateful it is happening. My mother was a good person who deserved better than what Angela gave her. This is not revenge, this is justice. Your mother would be proud of you. You never gave up. Neither did you. That is why we won." After the call, I stood on the porch, looking at my neighborhood. Lights glowed in windows. Families gathered inside. Life continued, normal and precious. I thought about the journey from that snowy night to this moment. The fear, the anger, the determination, the victory. I thought about what I had learned. That trust is not foolishness, but it must be balanced with wisdom. That asking for help is strength, not weakness. That community matters more than independence. That documentation and preparation are acts of self-protection, not paranoia. That evil exists, but so does goodness, in abundance, if you know where to look. When I returned inside, Garrett was showing Sharon's kids photos of Dorothy. "This is my mom. She was a teacher like Grandpa. She loved gardening and mysteries and terrible puns. She would have loved meeting you." Watching my son honor his mother, while building connections with a new generation, filled me with quiet joy. Life continued, love persisted, memory mattered. Late that evening, after guests departed and the dishes were washed and the house settled into comfortable quiet, I sat in Dorothy's reading chair that I had recovered from storage. I had moved it back to its spot by the window where she used to sit with her book and her tea. I opened one of her journals to a random page. "Maxwell worries too much about things he cannot control," she had written 30 years ago. "I tell him to focus on what he can control, his choices, his actions, his responses to what life brings. Everything else will work itself out if he trusts himself and the people who love him." She had been right, as she so often was. I could not control Angela's cruelty, but I could control my response. I could choose to fight back instead of accepting defeat. I could choose to trust Harold and Garrett and the justice system. I could choose to transform trauma into advocacy. Those choices made all the difference. I want to share something important with you. Through this experience, I learned lessons that might help you or someone you love. First, trust your instincts. When something feels wrong, it probably is. I felt uncomfortable with Angela's increasing involvement in my life, but I dismissed those feelings as paranoia or grief. I should have listened to that internal warning system. Your gut knows things your brain has not consciously processed yet. Honor that knowledge. Second, documentation is protection. Dorothy's meticulous record-keeping saved me. The original deed in the safety deposit box, her journals proving our intentions, the bank statements showing normal financial behavior before Angela's involvement, all of it became evidence that protected me. Keep important documents secure. Maintain records. It is not paranoia, it is preparation. Third, you are never too old or too anything to stand up for yourself. Angela counted on me accepting her narrative that I was declining, forgetful, incapable. She weaponized age against me, but age brings wisdom, experience, perspective. I was not too old to fight back. No one is too anything to defend their rights and dignity. Fourth, isolation is the predator's best tool. Angela worked to separate me from Garrett, to make me feel alone and dependent on her. The moment I reached out to Harold, everything changed. Connection is protection. Maintain relationships. Stay involved in your community. Let people into your life. Isolation makes you vulnerable. Community makes you strong. Fifth, asking for help is not weakness. I am a man of a generation that values independence, that sees needing help as failure. But asking Harold for a place to stay, calling Detective Brennan, accepting Sharon's legal expertise, letting Agent Webb handle the federal case, all of those acts of reaching out saved me. You cannot fight every battle alone. You should not try. Sixth, betrayal. Says everything about the betrayer and nothing about the betrayed. I felt foolish for trusting Angela. But trust is not foolishness, it is humanity. Angela's betrayal revealed her character, not mine. Do not let someone else's cruelty make you cynical or closed. Stay open, stay trusting, but stay wise. Seventh, justice matters. It would have been easier to walk away, to let Angela keep the house, to avoid the legal battle and emotional toll. But justice is not just about one victim. It is about stopping predators from creating more victims. My fight protected others. Your fight might too. Do not underestimate the importance of standing up for what is right, even when it is hard. Finally, home is not just walls and a roof. It is the people who stand with you when everything falls apart. It is the memories you protect and the new ones you create. It is the choice to keep living, keep trusting, keep building even after betrayal. This house is important to me not because of its monetary value but because of what it represents. Security, family, love, memory, Dorothy, Garrett, the life we built and the life I am still living. Angela tried to take all of that. She failed because she did not understand what really mattered. She saw a house. I saw a home. She saw an old man alone. I saw a father, friend, teacher, survivor. She saw weakness. I found strength. Now I use my experience to help others. Every workshop I lead at the Senior Center, every person I advise to trust their instincts, every time I share this story, I am turning Angela's cruelty into something useful. That is the best revenge. Not bitterness or anger, but transformation. Taking the worst thing that happened and using it to prevent it from happening to someone else. If you are facing something similar, whether it is financial exploitation, family betrayal, manipulation, or any form of predatory behavior, please hear this. You are not alone. You are not powerless. You are not too old, too trusting, too anything to fight back. Document everything. Trust your instincts. Reach out for help. Use the resources available. The justice system, social services, legal aid, community organizations, they exist to protect people like us. Use them. And if you are a family member or friend of someone you suspect is being exploited, pay attention, ask questions. Look beyond the surface. Be present. Your involvement might be the difference between someone losing everything and someone finding their way home. Dorothy used to say the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. She was right. I almost did nothing. I almost accepted defeat that night in the snow, but I did not. I fought back. I asked for help. I trusted the people who loved me and the system designed to protect me, and I won. Not just the house. I won back my dignity, my peace, my sense of security in the world. 1 year later, I can sit in Dorothy's chair and feel at peace. The house is mine, legally and emotionally. Angela is in federal prison where she belongs, unable to hurt anyone else. Brian is serving his sentence. Other victims have found closure. New safeguards at banks and in legal processes protect seniors from similar schemes. Change happened because we fought for it. The houseplant Dorothy loved, the one that survived 3 years after her death and a week of Angela's neglect, is blooming on the windowsill. I water it every Sunday morning while drinking my coffee and planning my week. The plant's survival feels symbolic. Life persists, growth continues. Beauty returns even after neglect and trauma. I am 68 now. I have no idea how many years I have left. But I know this. Whatever time I have will be spent living fully, loving openly, protecting fiercely. I will not let Angela's betrayal make me bitter or closed. I will not let fear keep me from trust. I will not let one terrible experience define the rest of my life. Instead, I choose to remember that people are mostly good, that community matters, that justice exists, that love persists even after loss, that home is worth fighting for, that we are stronger together than alone, that asking for help is wisdom, that documentation is protection, that instincts deserve respect, that age brings power, not weakness. These are the lessons worth keeping. This is the story worth telling, not just because it is mine, but because it might help someone else. If my experience prevents even one person from losing their home, their security, their peace, then everything I went through had purpose. As I sit here in the house Dorothy and I bought 42 years ago, surrounded by memories and possibilities, I feel something I did not feel that night in the snow. Hope, gratitude, peace. The future stretches ahead, unknown but not frightening. I have my son, my friends, my community, my home, my story. And I have the knowledge that when evil knocked on my door and tried to take everything, I stood up and said no. I fought back. I won. Not because I was special or particularly brave, but because I refused to accept defeat, and I had people who refused to let me face it alone. That is the real lesson. That is the truth worth sharing. You do not fight alone. You do not fall alone. You do not survive alone. We do it together, drawing strength from each other, building protection through connection, creating justice through persistence. Angela tried to make me a victim. Instead, she made me an advocate. She tried to take my home. Instead, she taught me what home really means. She tried to break me. Instead, she reminded me how strong I already was. That is how you win. Not by avoiding betrayal, which is impossible in a world where predators exist, but by refusing to let betrayal define you. By choosing to transform pain into purpose. By standing up, asking for help, trusting the process, and fighting for what matters. This is my story. But it is also a warning, a guide, a message of hope. If it happened to me, it can happen to anyone. And if I survived, thrived, and turned trauma into advocacy, so can you. The door that Angela locked me out of now opens freely. I walk through it every day, grateful for the home I nearly lost and the life I reclaimed. That gratitude fuels everything I do now, every workshop, every conversation, every moment spent helping others avoid what I experienced. This is how we take power back. This is how we turn victims into survivors and survivors into advocates. This is how we make sure that the Angelas and Brians of the world face consequences and that their victims find justice. This is how we build a world where trust is possible, where community protects, where age brings respect instead of vulnerability. I hope my story helps you. I hope it warns you. I hope it empowers you. Most of all, I hope it reminds you that you are never as alone or as powerless as you might feel in your darkest moment. Reach out. Fight back. Trust yourself. Use the resources available. Let people help you. Stand up for what is right. And if you see someone else struggling, be their Harold. Be their Sharon. Be their Detective Brennan. Be the person who believes them, supports them, fights for them. Be the community that makes predators fail and victims survive. That is how we change the world. One home at a time, one story at a time, one act of courage at a time. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you or someone you know ever faced financial exploitation or family betrayal? What warning signs did you notice? How did you protect yourself or help someone else? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else recognize danger or find the courage to fight back. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more real stories about resilience, justice, and overcoming life's hardest challenges. Share this with someone who might need to hear it, someone who is facing exploitation, or someone who works with vulnerable populations. Together, we can spread awareness and protect each other. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being part of this community that believes in justice, supports survivors, and refuses to let predators win. May you always have a safe home, trusted friends, and the courage to fight for what is yours. Stay strong, stay connected, and remember that you are never too old or too anything to stand up for yourself. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.